Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boys, Frogan Reactions here. My name is Logan.
And my name is Francesco.
And in today's video, we are going to do the comparison between the 13 Pro Max to the 14 Pro Max. Let's get into it.
We're going to get right into this. Here we go.
We will be comparing three areas of the 13 to the 14.
The three areas are going to be just general aspects of both phones when it comes to like the notch versus the dynamic island, and the size and shapes of the phone, and the bezels and such things, and the camera bumps. And then we're going to take a look at comparing photos, so how the different lenses compare to each other, video and photos and such, and how they go up against each other. And then video, we're going to take a look at the cinematic mode, the action mode, things like that. And then at the end, we're going to do a little satellite emergency SOS test on the 14 Pro Max. So let's get right into this. Here we go.
So this is the notch, and this is the dynamic island. So let's compare them.
So as you can see here, when we open the phone, you got the dynamic island up at the top, throwing some B-roll here. And then here, we got
the normal notch, the normal standard notch of the 13.
Yeah, so it's basically like that's where the Face ID and True Depth camera and things like that are held. But in the 14s, they put the dynamic island, and it's actually interactive. So if I play a song here at low volume, because we're not gonna get copyright, it goes up at the top. You can put your finger there, and it's like interactive and such. And you can also like fast forward, pause, play. But this doesn't have that.
No, that does not have that ability, because the notch is actually connected to the top of the screen.
Now moving on, we have the always on display. So when you turn the phones off, the old phone, when you turn it off, oh, it's just a black screen, right? But when you turn off the 14 Pro, boop, it's always on. So it just stays like that. It's always like that. And then when I click it, it brightens up. Depends on how you like it, but pretty cool. Also, if we look at the phones in general, you can see we got a more sharper curve on the 14 versus the 13. And then if we look at the cameras, as you can see,
this one sticks out a little bit more than this one, but it's still the same.
There's a pretty big difference in the thickness, and also the camera size themselves. If you look at them,
it's bigger.
They're bigger, 100%. But
even this little thing is bigger than that.
Yeah, even the flash. The LiDAR sensor is the same, but the LiDAR sensor has always been the same. It never changes. So right now we are taking a look at the phones at the lowest brightness possible, and we're going to slowly raise them because the 13 Pro Max has a max brightness of 1200 nits and the 14 has a max of 1600 nits, and I think at HDR it's even higher. I'm not too sure. So Logan, go ahead and raise the brightness on this phone all the way to full. Boom. And now the other phone. This is supposed to be brighter, but I can tell on the phone, as you can see on the bottom, it's all blown out here.
And
here it's not.
Clear.
So you can tell right away that one's brighter than the other. So let's move on to the next test.
Let's go. We will be comparing the flashes on the 13 and the 14, and we will see how they take pictures.
Yes, so we're gonna make this room really dark. And if we take a little close-up look at the flashes, one slightly bigger than the other, but this has two little circles if you look really closely.
Yep.
And the 14 Pro has one massive circle.
We are recording. Thank you.
So we are gonna take some flash photography over here. We're gonna turn on the flash instead of night mode.
So here we go.
So flash. We're gonna force the flash, and we're gonna take a picture. 3, 2, 1. We do the same thing with the 14.
So here we go.
Ready? 3, 2, 1. And now we're gonna take a look at those photos, see what we got.
Let's go.
Starting off, we have the flash photo taken on the 13 Pro Max versus the 14 Pro Max, and I'd say on the 14 Pro Max you have more natural colors and the tones on the face look more natural, but when you look at the 13 Pro Max, you can tell that a flash is being used. The flash looks very harsh and not smooth on the skin. It looks like an awful flash. So 14 definitely has an improved flash on this one.
So we are outside. It is a little bit chilly, as you can see. I don't know if you can tell if it's snowing, but yes, that's happening right now. But we are gonna continue our test because the show must go on. So let's get into it. First, we're gonna start with comparing 12 to 48 megapixel photos because the wide lens on the 14 has a 48 megapixel lens. That only has a 12. So we're gonna take a photo of him and let's get right into it. So,
all right,
3, 2, 1. Okay. Now we're gonna do the same thing with the 14 on 48 megapixels. 3, 2, 1.
Here we are taking a look at a 12 megapixel photo taken on 13 Pro Max versus a 48 megapixel photo taken on the 14 Pro Max, and I'd say they look pretty similar. Depth of field is a little more evident on the 14 Pro Max. It has a better bokeh. There's more contrast, more saturation on the 14 Pro Max. 13 Pro Max looks a little more flat and over sharpened. But also when we zoom in, you can tell that there's way more quality, obviously, because it's quadruple the amount of pixels.
so now we're gonna be comparing the
lenses. So yes, we're gonna take a look at the 3 lenses. Obviously we have the 0.5 ultra wide lens, we have the 1x wide lens, and we have the 3x telephoto lens. But on the 13 Pro Max, you can only use those 3 modes. On the 14, we have an extra 2x mode, because when you have a 48 megapixel lens and crop into 2 times, it's still a 12 megapixel photos cropped in using the same lens as the wide lens because of that 48 megapixel sensor.
So here we go.
So we're gonna test out those lenses and see how they stack up against
Let's
each other.
go.
Here we go. 3, 2. Okay, now we're gonna do the wide. Done. Now the telephoto. Okay, we're gonna go to 2x on that. Okay.
First up, we have the ultra-wide angle lens, and I'd say the overall differences is probably the colors and contrast. The 13 Pro Max photo looks a little bit flat and undersaturated, but the 14 Pro Max has way more saturation, way more contrast, a little sharper, so overall better on the 14 Pro Max. In this comparison for the wide angle lens, I'd say we have a little more bokeh on the 14 Pro Max. It's very, very subtle, and as well as a little bit more contrast and a little bit more color coming in on the 14 Pro Max as well, but they are very, very close to each other. Now for this photo we took on the 13 Pro Max, we zoomed in on the wide angle lens to 2x, and on the 14 Pro Max you have the dedicated 2x option, which is basically taking it into 48 megapixels and zooming into 12 megapixels. So obviously it's going to be higher quality because it's a bigger sensor in the actual phone, but overall they look pretty good, and that's actually the 13 Pro Max is doing quite a good job despite it being zoomed in. Finally, on the telephoto lens we can see that there's slightly more saturation on the 14 Pro Max, but the bokeh seems to be a little bit higher on the 13 Pro Max despite it being last year's phone, but Apple sometimes does that with their lenses. And I'd say the contrast is about the same, and overall the images are pretty good, so both stack up well.
So now we're going to be testing out selfie modes on the 2 phones, and I believe the 14 Pro Max has a slightly better camera on the front-facing camera, so we're going to test it out. Let's do this.
Here we go. Peace.
Perfect. Now we're going to try with this one.
And for the selfie photo, it seems like the 14 Pro Max has the same consistency it's had with all the photo tests, with more contrast and higher saturation. And interesting note, the 13 Pro Max looks to have a little bit higher bokeh than the 14 Pro Max, but again, Apple sometimes does that year over year. But overall, both photos look great.
So now we're going to be testing out action mode on the 14 because the 13 Pro Max does not have action mode. And
there we
the
go!
14 Pro Max has an extra stabilization feature to make it look like you're using a gimbal, but you're not. So let's test it out. Here we go. Here we go. 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 Now we're going to be testing out cinematic mode on the 2 phones. The 13 Pro Max only has a 1080p limit for cinematic mode, but with the 14 Pro Max, you can now record up to 4K in cinematic mode. So we're going to test the 2 out to see. Obviously 4K is better, but we're still going to show it for you anyway, so here we go.
Hello everybody, my name is Logan and we're here at the Pond First News. I'm with Fox News and I'm here demonstrating the pond. It's snowing and it's -3. Let's go!
Yes, we're demonstrating cinematic mode on 1080p. Now on to the 14 Pro.
Hello everybody, my name is Logan and I am here for Fox News and I'm here to give you a live shot of the pond.
Yes.
Here we are, it's -3 degrees and it is currently snowing. Back to you guys in the studio.
We are testing out 4K cinematic mode on the 14 Pro Max. Here we go.
So now we're going to be testing out Emergency SOS via satellite. That is a brand new feature, only exclusive to the 14 series models.
So here we go.
Basically what it does is when you're stranded in the middle of nowhere, kind of like where we are here, and you have no data connections, so let's say you get hurt and hiking in the mountains, there's no cellular connection. How are you supposed to call for help? Well, with SOS via satellite, you point your phone up to the sky and it connects with satellites, so you can send a text to 911 and they will come to your location via satellite. So we're gonna demo that out here. So we're gonna hit try demo. So we're gonna hit next on this. We're gonna test the satellite connection. I have to turn my data off temporarily. Okay, so we got a clear view of the sky. Come on. It is looking for my location right now. Give me satellite connectivity. Oh. Looking for signal. Satellite available soon. Oh, here it is. Okay. We're gonna turn this way. Okay. We're pointing at the satellite. We are pointing at the satellite right now. The satellite is facing northeast. Here we go. Here's a text. Keep pointing the satellite to send and receive. This is crazy. We are sending a text via satellite. Not. Because my data is off right now, as you can see in the top right. There's no data being used right now. This message is being sent via a satellite. It is communicating with the sky right now. This is crazy. Okay. Trapped. What is your location? Type whatever you want and you'll receive responses. Okay, I'd like to type. My location is, we're gonna write Toronto because that's simple. My location is Toronto. It's sending. Look, see, so this is how long it takes to send a message via satellite. It takes quite some time because it's slow. And there's supposed to be very concise messages to keep the conversation quick and to the point. And you tell us what caused the breakdown, blah, blah, blah. You answer a bunch of questions. But we're going to end it here because we don't need to see all that. That was awesome. Props to Apple on making that feature. That is a great feature. So now we're going to go back to the studio to film our outro.
We'll swing it back to you, Logan, in the studio. Well, that is it for this one. Thank you so much for joining us on this review and comparison between the 13 to the 14. So I really hope you enjoyed this video.
We covered many different areas, such as the overall aspects and physical shapes of the phone and different size changes there. We went through a bunch of photo tests to show you what's new on the 14 and how it stacks up against the last year's 13. And also we tested out some video features as well, similar new features and such. And then we also tried Emergency SOS via satellite, which is exclusive to the new 14 model. So we hope you enjoyed this. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.
Peace.